the eye, tossed a single trash bag of my clothes onto the rain-soaked driveway, and told me to get out and never come back. For 20 years, I carried that crushing rejection, believing I was entirely unlovable and wondering what horrible thing a child could possibly do to make their own father discard them like garbage. I spent 2 decades building a completely new life from scratch, miles away from the shadows of my past. But yesterday, a certified legal letter arrived at my doorstep, unlocking a dark family secret that changed absolutely everything. It turns out, my father wasn't the monster I thought he was, and the people who took me in weren't my saviors. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and see how far my story has reached. My name is Ariana, and I am 31 years old. If you saw me today, working in my green scrubs as a dedicated large animal veterinarian at Hollow Creek Large Animal Veterinary Service, you would see a woman who looks completely confident, fulfilled, and at peace. But behind this professional smile lies a deep, jagged scar that dates back exactly 20 years. You see, the person you think you are is often forged in the fires of your darkest night, and my darkest night happened when I was just an innocent 11-year-old child. It was a Tuesday evening, and a torrential downpour was hammering against the windows of our home. I was sitting in the living room, working on a school drawing, when my dad, Arthur, walked in. His face was a mask of cold, unyielding stone. Without saying a single word, he walked up to my bedroom, threw open my closet, and began aggressively shoving my clothes into a heavy-duty black trash bag. I followed him, crying and trembling, begging him to tell me what I had done wrong.
He didn't look at me.
He didn't soften his gaze. He simply grabbed my arm, led me down the stairs, and tossed that single trash bag onto the rain-soaked driveway. "Get out," he said, his voice completely devoid of emotion. "Get out and never come back. You're no longer my responsibility." He slammed the heavy front door, leaving me sobbing on the pavement as the freezing rain soaked through my clothes. I watched the lights of the house sit there, cold and indifferent, while my entire world collapsed into the dirt. I felt completely discarded, an unlovable piece of garbage thrown away by the one man who was supposed to protect me forever. Just when the terror was about to completely swallow me whole, a pair of bright headlights cut through the dark sheets of rain. A sleek car pulled up to the curb, and out stepped my Aunt Diana and Uncle Raymond. They surged toward me with open arms, wrapping a warm, dry blanket around my shivering shoulders. As they pulled me close, whispering that they would shield me from my father's unexplainable cruelty, I looked back at the dark windows of my childhood home one last time, completely unaware that my rescue was actually the beginning of a 20-year deception. For the next 20 years, my life became a relentless attempt to outrun the phantom of that rainy night. Aunt Diana and Uncle Raymond took me into their beautiful home, providing a roof over my head, but they never let me forget how I got there. Every family dinner, every minor mistake I made, was met with a gentle, manipulative reminder of how lucky I was. They constantly reinforced the narrative that my father, Arthur, was an unstable, cold-hearted man who simply didn't want the burden of a daughter. Over time, their words became my inner voice, all my deep-seated pain and insecurity into my education, desperately trying to prove my worth to a world that had discarded me. That obsession with achievement eventually paid off. I pushed through years of grueling study to become a successful veterinarian, specializing in equine care at Hollow Creek Large Animal Veterinary Service. Out in the pastures, dealing with animals that couldn't mask their pain with lies, I finally found a sense of peace and control. I had completely buried my past, choosing to live as though Arthur had never existed. But your past has a way of refusing to stay buried. Last week, Diana and Raymond insisted I join them on a family vacation to a luxury resort. It was supposed to be a celebration of my recent promotions, a rare moment of relaxation. But as we sat on the terrace enjoying the view, the fragile piece I had spent 2 decades constructing completely shattered. The sun was shining brightly over the luxury resort, and on the surface, everything looked absolutely picture-perfect. My aunt and uncle were laughing, sipping their drinks, and discussing our plans for the evening. But beneath that calm exterior, a strange, Suffocating tension was beginning to twist tightly in my gut. I looked at Diana and Raymond, the people who had raised me, yet I couldn't shake the sudden, unexplainable feeling that I was an outsider looking into a completely foreign world. That uneasy feeling turned into pure panic when my phone buzzed in my hand. I glanced down at the screen, expecting a routine update from the clinic. Instead, my heart stopped. It was a text message from a completely hidden, restricted number. The words on the screen were stark, chilling, and cut through the warm afternoon air like a razor blade. It read exactly, "Fly home. Don't say anything to your parents." My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the glowing text. Who could possibly know I was here? And why did they refer to my aunt and uncle as my parents? I looked up, my eyes darting toward Diana and Raymond, who were still entirely wrapped up in their own conversation, completely oblivious to the bomb that had just dropped into my lap. A wave of intense anxiety washed over me. Every instinct I possessed screamed that something catastrophic was unfolding back home. Without giving myself time to overthink or hesitate, I quietly stood up from the table, made a vague excuse about feeling suddenly unwell, and retreated back to my room. Within an hour, I had packed my bags and booked an emergency, one-way flight back to the city, terrified of what was waiting for me. The flight back was the longest 3 hours of my life. Every rumble of the airplane engines seemed to echo the frantic beating of my heart. My mind raced through a million terrifying scenarios, but absolutely nothing could have prepared me for the reality waiting on the other side of that terminal gate. When the plane finally touched down and the seatbelt sign clicked off, I practically ran through the jet bridge. I walked out into the bustling arrivals area, my eyes scanning the crowd for anything unusual. That is when I saw them. Standing directly in the center of the walkway, cutting through the sea of ordinary travelers, was a small group that made me freeze in my tracks. A sharp-dressed man holding a thick manila folder stood flanked by 2 uniformed police officers. They weren't looking around vaguely. Their eyes were locked dead on me. As I approached, the man stepped forward with practiced, clinical precision. "Ariana Vance?" he asked, his voice carrying an authority that made the surrounding air feel heavy. I could only nod, my throat completely dry. He opened the folder, revealing an official legal crest. "My name is Edward Vance. I am the legal representative for the estate of Arthur Vance. These officers are here to ensure your safety. We need you to come with us immediately regarding a critical investigation into your custody and asset fraud." The names, the uniforms, the sudden mention of my biological father, it all collided in my head like a physical blow. The crowded airport terminal began to spin violently, the loud chatter of travelers fading into a distant, muffled roar. The weight of 20 years of lies suddenly crushed down on my chest, suffocating me. Before I could ask a single question, darkness swept over the edges of my vision, and my knees completely buckled, sending me crashing to the floor as I lost consciousness entirely. When I finally opened my eyes, the harsh, fluorescent lights of a private precinct office blinded me. I was lying on a couch, a paper cup of water sitting on the desk nearby. As the fog cleared from my mind, I saw Edward Vance, the lawyer from the airport, sitting across from me. He looked at me with a profound, solemn sympathy that immediately made my stomach churn. "Drink some water, Ariana," he said gently. "What I am about to tell you is going to change everything you thought you knew about your life." He opened his thick briefcase and pulled out a massive legal dossier, placing it directly in front of me. "Your father, Arthur, passed away 4 days ago," Edward began, his voice steady. "But he didn't forget you. In fact, he spent the last 20 years of his life executing a meticulous plan to save you from the people you call your family." My jaw dropped as he shoved a stack of bank statements and encrypted email printouts toward me. The documents revealed a horrifying truth. 20 years ago, my late biological mother had left me a massive, multi-million-dollar inheritance, locked away in a trust fund. Aunt Diana and Uncle Raymond had discovered this fortune. Being deeply in debt from failed business schemes, they cornered my father. They explicitly threatened to frame Arthur for a severe, fabricated crime that would destroy his life and lock him away, allowing them to legally strip away his custody of me. Arthur knew he couldn't beat them in a corrupt, public custody battle without risking your safety, Edward explained, pointing to a signed affidavit. So, he made the ultimate sacrifice. He staged that cruel, rainy night eviction, knowing their greed would drive them to immediately take you in so they could access the trust fund's monthly allowance. He let you hate him for 2 decades just to keep you physically safe, while he quietly worked with my firm to build a bulletproof legal trap to destroy them completely. Edward Vance pulled a worn, leather-bound journal from the very bottom of his briefcase and handed it to me with trembling hands. As I opened it, I recognized my dad's sharp, precise handwriting. The pages were filled with detailed entries tracking my entire life from a distance. He had newspaper clippings of my graduation, photos of my first day at Hollow Creek Veterinary Service, and notes celebrating every single milestone I thought I was achieving entirely alone. He had never stopped loving me. He had simply been watching over me from the shadows, counting down the days until I was legally safe from the monsters who raised me. Diana and Raymond thought they were being incredibly clever, Edward said, a cold smile touching his lips. For 20 years, they systematically drained what they believed was your primary trust fund. But Arthur was always 10 steps ahead. That fund was just a decoy, filled with a fraction of his wealth to keep them satisfied. The real fortune, along with the actual deeds to every single family property, was legally locked away until your 31st birthday, which was last week. As the final pieces of the puzzle locked into place, a detective walked into the room, nodding firmly toward Edward. He looked at me with deep respect. Ariana, thanks to the undeniable evidence your father compiled right up until his final days, the authorities have just executed arrest warrants. Your aunt and uncle are being taken into custody right now at the resort for grand larceny, extortion, and systemic financial fraud. They're going to prison for a very long time. The weight of 20 years of unearned shame and self-hatred completely washed away, replaced by a bittersweet wave of profound grief and intense gratitude. My father had willingly broken my heart, ruined his own reputation, and endured 2 decades of agonizing loneliness just to ensure I would survive. He had sacrificed everything to hand me my future, free of the predators hiding inside my own family. The next morning, I visited my father's quiet, sunlit grave for the very first time. Standing there, surrounded by the soft whisper of the wind, the tears finally came, not tears of anger or confusion, but of pure, exhausting release. I gently laid a bouquet of fresh flowers against the headstone, finally free from the heavy, 20-year burden of feeling unwanted. My dad had given up everything to protect me, and now it was my turn to honor his incredible sacrifice by living a life filled with purpose, strength, and genuine happiness. With the true inheritance he left behind, I expanded Hollow Creek Veterinary Service, building a state-of-the-art animal sanctuary to help the innocent creatures that, just like me, simply needed a safe haven to heal and thrive. This story still leaves me with a lingering question, and I want to ask all of you listening today. If you were in my shoes, could you truly forgive a parent who broke your heart and let you hate them for 20 years, even if it was just to save your life? Or would the pain of that rainy night be too much to overcome? Tell me the city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. If you want to see more families getting exactly what they deserve, click on one of the 2 videos on your screen right now. Thank you for staying with me until the very end. And remember, no secret stays